Welcome to the deep dive. We're really diving in today into Atomic Habits by James Clear. You've given me a fascinating mix of stuff here. Summaries, sure, but even some insights straight from James Clear himself. So I think we're in for a really interesting deep dive today.
It really is remarkable, isn't it, how much we're influenced by these tiny habits, these little things we barely even think about.
Isn't that the truth? And what's got me so intrigued is it's not about some radical overnight transformation. It's these subtle little 1% shifts that over time really add up. I feel like we're about to unlock some secret to a better life or something.
I think so too. And the thing that resonates so strongly with me is how Atomic Habits really pushes that system over goals mentality. It's not about, oh, I wish I was the kind of person who, it's like, how do you actually build the system to become that person? Clear gave this great example, I think it was in one of his talks, about building a house. Like you wouldn't just, poof, expect a finished house just because you want one, right?
Definitely not. You need blueprints, materials, a whole lot of work, and time.
Exactly. Habits work the same way. It's about shifting that mindset from I wish I was to I'm building the system to become.
Okay, I'm with you on this whole systems approach, but my brain is craving a framework here. Like, how do we actually build these systems? Tell me more about these atomic habits.
So think of them like the smallest possible change, right? Like the atoms of our routines. And these tiny habits, just like those 1% improvements we were talking about, they compound over time. Clear breaks it down into this really neat loop. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Ooh, I love a good loop. Hit me with an example.
All right, let's say you're feeling a little bored and you, without even thinking about it, reach for your phone. That boredom, that's your cue. The craving is that desire for distraction or a little hit of dopamine maybe. The response is, of course, you grabbing your phone, and then the reward is that quick burst of entertainment.
Okay, first of all, how did you get inside my head? Because that is, scarily relatable. But seriously, knowing that, how do we actually use this habit loop to create good habits and, kick those bad ones to the curb?
That's where Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come in. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Okay, I am all ears. Let's break those down. First up, make it obvious.
So this first law is all about self-awareness. You can't change a habit if you don't even know you're doing it right. He has this thing, a habit scorecard. Sounds simple, but it's actually pretty powerful. Basically, you just write down everything you do throughout the day, from the moment you wake up to when you go to sleep.
Oh, wow. I'm already feeling personally attacked.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what my scorecard would look like. Probably a lot of, mindless scrolling and procrastinating, if I'm being honest.
Oh, we've all been there. It's not about judging yourself, it's about gathering information. Because once you're aware of those default habits, you can start to redesign your environment to make those good habits easier. And those bad habits, well, you just kind of nudge them out of sight, out of mind.
So, if I wanted to play more guitar, instead of keeping it tucked away in my closet, I should probably put it on a stand right in the middle of my living room where I can't miss it.
Exactly. You make the cue for the good habit, impossible to ignore. It's all about understanding that we're not always going to be super motivated, so how do we set ourselves up for success?
Love that. Okay, what about making it attractive? Because, let's be real, some habits, no matter how good they are for us, just feel more like chores. How do we change that?
That's where the whole dopamine thing comes in. See, our brains don't actually get that excited about the reward itself, but the anticipation of the reward. That's where you get that dopamine hit. One of the strategies I find most effective that Clear talks about is temptation bundling. And it's just like it sounds. You link an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Give me an example, because right now I really want to watch the latest episode of my favorite show, but I know I should be working on this presentation.
So what if you only let yourself watch that show while you're exercising? Suddenly that workout doesn't sound so bad, right?
Oh my gosh, you're blowing my mind right now. That is so simple, but so smart. You've officially hacked my brain.
No brain hacking here. Just working with, not against, our brain's natural wiring. And on the flip side, we can make those bad habits less attractive by focusing on their downsides. It's all about how we frame it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've made it obvious, we've made it attractive. What about making it easy? Because sometimes even just thinking about starting a new habit can feel exhausting.
I hear you, and this is where one of my favorite concepts from Atomic Habits comes in, the 2-minute rule. The idea is you break down your desired habit into something so small, it's almost impossible not to do it.
So instead of, trying to run a marathon on day 1, I should just focus on putting on my running shoes.
You got it. Or say you want to start a daily writing habit. Just commit to writing one sentence. That's it. The key is to remove the friction, make it super easy to get started, and let that momentum build.
Right. I mean, that is so much less intimidating. Okay, bring on the final law. Make it satisfying. This one feels key because we're way more likely to stick with something if it feels good, right?
100%. This is where we close that habit loop by really reinforcing the behavior. And one of the simplest but most effective ways to do this is to track your progress, visually, I mean.
Oh, you mean like marking off those X's on a calendar?
Oh,
For
yeah.
every day you stick to the habit. I gotta say, I actually find those super satisfying.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because it's a visual representation, that chain of X is getting longer and longer. It just taps right into our brain's reward system, gives us a little hit of dopamine, which keeps us motivated.
It's like leveling up, but in real life.
Yeah.
Oh, and I also loved Clear's idea of a habit contract. What's your take on those?
Oh, those are great. See, a habit contract, it adds a layer of external accountability. We talked about dopamine and anticipation, right? Well, this kind of taps into our aversion to loss. Like, we're often more motivated to avoid something negative than we are to achieve something positive?
It's true. I'm much more likely to, like, keep a winning streak alive than I am to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Speaking of streaks, Clear talks about the power of identity change when it comes to habits, right?
Yeah.
That really clicked for me.
Yeah, he does. And I think it's huge because true behavior change, a lot of times it's actually identity change. It's not just about doing the habit, it's about becoming the type of person who does that habit naturally. You know what I mean?
Right. So it's not just about dragging myself to the gym. It's about actually seeing myself as someone who prioritizes their health and fitness. It's changing the story I'm telling myself about who I am.
Exactly. And the more we do that, the more we align our actions with that desired identity, the more ingrained it becomes.
Ah.
It makes me think of that quote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit.
Ooh, I like that. And it's actually pretty empowering when you think about it, that we have so much control over our habits and, by extension, our own identities.
We really do. One thing Clear talks about that I find fascinating is the power of our environment. Like, it plays a much bigger role than we realize in shaping our habits.
You're so right. So it's not just about willpower. It's about creating an environment that supports those good habits we're trying to build.
Exactly. Clear talks about becoming the architect of your own environment, designing a space that makes good habits easier and bad habits harder.
Totally. It reminds me of that study about how people were way more likely to eat candy if it was in a clear container versus an opaque container, like out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. So make those cues for your good habits super obvious. Keep those running shoes by the door, the book you want to read on your nightstand, that kind of thing. And on the flip side, make it harder to give in to those tempting bad habits. Like, if you're trying to cut back on sugar, maybe don't keep a cookie jar on the counter.
Oh, I am so guilty of that. But it's not just about our physical surroundings, right? It's our digital environments too, like unsubscribing from those tempting email lists, or even being mindful of who we follow online.
Absolutely. It's about being intentional with the information we consume, the people we surround ourselves with, even the online spaces we inhabit. It all makes a difference.
This is so insightful. I feel like Atomic Habits isn't just this guide to individual behavior change.
Yeah.
It's really a framework for understanding how our habits, our identities, and the world around us, how they all kind of weave together.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's about those small, seemingly insignificant things, those atomic changes. But they create this ripple effect, and they end up shaping not only who we are, but how we experience the world around us.
So well said. And it's about remembering that even when we stumble, every day is a chance to hit that reset button, a chance to get back to those small, positive actions that move us towards where we want to be.
I love that. Because it's a journey, right? It's not a destination. And like any journey worth taking, there are going to be detours, a few unexpected turns along the way.
So true. And it's a journey I am ready to embrace,
Yeah.
one atomic habit at a time. But, I got to be honest, there are definitely times when I feel like I'm just on autopilot, just going through the motions, even with good habits.
Yeah.
What happens when we hit those plateaus? When we're putting in the work, but we're not really seeing the results we were hoping for.
Oh, it's so common, isn't it? You hit that wall, and suddenly all that motivation just flies out the window. One thing I find really helpful that Clear talks about is this idea of a Vegas, plateau of latent potential.
Okay, plateau of latent potential.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of intimidating, but also kind of awesome.
Right. But it's actually pretty simple. It just means that sometimes we need to keep showing up, keep putting in those reps, even if we don't see those like immediate Instagram-worthy results. Because a lot of times those small, consistent efforts, they are creating change. It's just happening beneath the surface.
It's like that saying, the bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists,
Yeah,
right? Sometimes you just got to be patient. Trust that the growth is happening even if you can't see it yet.
exactly. And then all of a sudden you hit that tipping point and boom, all those seemingly small efforts, they result in this like massive breakthrough.
I love that visual. It's like those tiny atomic habits are just building and building over time, and then boom, massive shift. So how do we push through those inevitable plateaus then? How do we keep ourselves engaged, keep that motivation going?
Well, Clear talks a lot about the importance of reflection and experimentation. It's not about finding that one perfect routine and being stuck with it forever. It's about being curious, asking yourself, is this still working for me? Does this habit still fit with my goals? And then being willing to make adjustments as needed.
Right. So it's like we're all scientists in our own lives, constantly testing and tweaking our experiments to figure out what works best.
Exactly, because our needs change, our priorities shift, and our habits should reflect that. So pay attention to those little cues, those moments when a habit starts to feel a little stale, maybe a little off, and don't be afraid to switch things up.
This has been amazing. I feel like Atomic Habits has given us this really practical, actionable roadmap for like designing a life that really reflects what we value, what we want to be doing. And it's all about those baby steps, right?
Absolutely. It's recognizing that those small, seemingly insignificant actions, those atomic habits, they really can create this ripple effect. They can transform not only our own lives, but the world around us.
So well said. And for everyone listening, think about this. What's one small change you can commit to today? What tiny habit can you embrace to create a more positive ripple in your own life? We want to hear from you, so let us know in the comments below.
We really do. And while you're there, tell us what book should we deep dive into next. We're always up for a challenge.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next fascinating deep dive. Until then, keep those good habits rolling.